We invite you to take your seats so that our Yom Kippur Symposium may begin. We're very grateful that so many of you are here and many more are live streaming. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on this sacred day. The Yom Kippur Symposium has been a very important part of our holy day since it first began in 1975. Our dear Rabbi Karf of blessed memory created the program for our congregation, and it is not only a testament to his creativity and insightfulness, but has become a profound expectation for all of us. And this day will surely not be a disappointment. I am so pleased, delighted, as many of you have come to know that who our speakers are through our temple bulletin. Let me just remind you of the order of our speakers today: Jonathan Rauch, Jordan Folleder, Laura Hall, Rachel Karf-Weisenstein. And as we listen carefully to their words, I'm sure that we will be touched, moved, and inspired. So without further ado, thank you for being here, and thank each of you, as we will, for your contributions to this day. Johnny. Let me make sure it's nice and tall for you. Okay.
Good afternoon and Shana Tova. It was Sunday night, June 25th, and I had just checked my 60th birthday off the list and was ready for some downtime and looking forward to some R&R over the summer. I figured I'd check my email one last time before I went to bed to see if Southeast Asia had responded, since it was already their Monday morning. These were my customers in Southeast Asia. The new emails downloaded. No response from Singapore, but there was an unexpected message from Rabbi David Lyon. Uh-oh. It invited me to speak at the Yom Kippur Symposium, and my initial reactive response was, really? I faithfully attended this symposium for years, and the first thing that I remember previous participants previously expressing similar reluctance, and them saying that Rabbi Lyon was insistent on their participation. So I knew I didn't stand much of a chance of not participating. But I called Rabbi Lyon anyways to discuss my participation, and the conversation went something like this. David, I'm unsure about participating. In all the years that I've attended and listened to symposium speakers, I don't have a story to tell like those that have done it before. Johnny, I know that you do, and I know that you'll do great, and I would really like you to accept the invitation. So that was it. The conversation was over. And the only thing that I could think of saying was, okay, I'll do it, but on one condition, that you put me in a good speaker slot. Please do not put me behind a speaker that knocks it out of the ballpark. Rabbi, while I appreciate you accommodating the request, actually, I was just joking. In the days following our conversation, I thought about it and realized that this is something that I should do for the following reasons. The temple had been there for me when I needed it, as I'll explain. And I felt that I owed it to the temple. Secondly, they say that you should do something every day that scares you. And you guessed it, today this is it for me. So I had to figure out what I wanted to talk about, and which I already had some thoughts about, but what was more challenging was how Judaism had shaped that story. Secondly, I had to decide, did I really want to go before the congregation at large and bare my soul? By the way, I already knew the answer to that question, but I'm still here. A little background. I'm a native Houstonian, having grown up at Beth Israel, where I went to religious school, was bar mitzvahed, confirmed, married, and had my children's baby namings. The temple also counseled me and family members in sickness and performed family funerals. As they say, the true cycle of life. Also, Dad was a past president of the temple, so there was also a family connection. Religious school wasn't particularly meaningful to me. In fact, I've said before that I feel Rabbi Karf was wasted on my youth. Sorry, Rachel. I went because Mom and Dad told me I had to go, and skipping it, as some did back in the day, wasn't really in my DNA. Not really knowing it at the time, but I realized later in life that the lasting benefits that came from religious school were the lifelong close relationships that continue today that I made with a group of classmates. I know several are out there today watching, eagerly critiquing my performance, just as they did my bar mitzvah tour portion almost 50 years ago. Our family moved to Memorial during my last year of elementary school, and having gone through the Spring Branch public school system, I quickly developed two sets of distinct friend groups, my non-Jewish friends and my Jewish friends. For the most part, they were separate and apart, and this continued through college at the University of Texas and at graduate business and law school thereafter. In 1992, I met Rena on a Jewish Federation trip to Israel, and 3 years later, we were married by Rabbis Karf and Lyon at the temple. I was a practicing attorney at the time, but realized that the adversarial nature of the practice wasn't to my liking. So I went to work with my dad in a small oil field equipment company that he had set up as an alternative after he had sold his lifelong business. In hindsight, it was one of the best decisions that I ever made, as I found the freewheeling aspects of the small business much more to my liking. In addition, it began more than a 25-year working relationship with Dad, where I was blessed to have him as my mentor, partner, and co-worker. In the 25-plus years that we worked together, literally side by side, I don't ever remember having a crossword with him, and it enriched what was already a great relationship. Dad taught me how to make the job fun, yet still work hard and be responsible, and he modeled for me how to treat others, whether they were employees, the machine shop crews that worked on our equipment, or any of our other business associates. I have tried to continue that practice, and as a result, working with our employees, vendors, and customers still has a family feel to it. I must tell you also that today is Dad's birthday, and I only wish that he was here to hear this. I think that he would have loved this. As Dad's health began to decline, my nephew Adam came to me looking for a job. The timing was just right, and I feel like our relationship mirrors that of Dad's and mine. Adam is here today, and Adam, I hope that you're finding this Day of Atonement meaningful. But after sundown, it's back to the office. On the home front, life was easy with Rena. We were compatible and complemented each other well. Excuse me. We had two beautiful, talented daughters, Evan, now 27 years old, and Meredith, 24 years old, who always were and are good girls. And they made us proud and look like good parents. Life was smooth sailing until one day in December of 2005, at age 42, I suffered an ischemic stroke out of the blue that left me completely paralyzed on the left side of my body. Thankfully, Rena, a nurse, found me and recognized immediately what was happening. Thanks to her and the clot-dissolving medicine that was timely administered, my left side function slowly came back. But over the next 2 years, I laid very low and focused on my recovery. Rena, Mom, and Dad drove me to many therapy sessions, doctor's appointments, and kept me on a very short leash. My office family stepped up also in a big way to cover. Rabbi Lyon and Beth Israel were also there for me in my recovery. And even with all that support, it was difficult. The recovery was not even, and it required a great deal of determination and patience on my part, as well as my family's part. Once I had some distance from the stroke and my health continued to improve, I started to recognize the silver linings of what happened. First, I attended several stroke survivor support groups and just then realized how fortunate I was. Secondly, it made me realize and appreciate all the support systems that were always there for me, but which I never previously had the need to utilize like I did. Thirdly, it forced a pause and it allowed for a reset in my life. For instance, I always liked being with children, and I started mentoring Spring Branch ISD students. Well, fast forward 18 years and 5 student mentees later, and I continue to mentor today, and I think I get more out of mentoring than my mentees do. As I recovered, life regained normalcy. That was until 2019 and 2020. In 2019, Rena was diagnosed with primary peritoneal cancer, akin to ovarian cancer. And she fought the ups and downs that comes with that disease for 14 months until her death at age 56 in February of 2020. In September of that year, Dad passed away, and just to finish it off, I had to put down our family dog, Charlie, the following month. I felt lost. It was just a lot of loss of those very close to me in a short period of time. It was also an experience that I fortunately never had dealt with before, and it was just difficult to process. As it turned out, with COVID shutting everything down immediately after Rena's death, it provided a respite for my daughters and me that allowed us to shelter in place in our house together for 6 weeks. We all needed it. COVID allowed us the break in togetherness that we needed to begin our grieving. In addition, I again heavily relied on those same things that helped me cope with my sickness: the support of our immediate and extended family, the love of my friends, my office, and my faith. 3+ years later, and I still miss Rena, Dad, and Charlie terribly. But Dad and Charlie's death felt different to me than Rena's. At least Dad and Charlie enjoyed a full, long, healthy life. Rena got gypped. And as good of a dad that I try to be to the girls and I both realize that I am not their mother, and no one else will be their mother. And that pains me. Yet we all also understand that's not going to change. As I was putting my thoughts together for today, it made me think how Judaism has affected my life. With age and experiences, I have gained some perspective. One thing I know is it's important to me that I attend Friday night services at the end of each December, close to the anniversary of my stroke, in recognition of my thankfulness and appreciation for my recovery and my good health. Since Rena's passing, The outpouring of love and support that the girls and I have received from friends and family is hard to describe. And much of that has come from the Jewish community, which isn't lost on me. Even today, approaching 4 years since she's been gone, friends will still reach out to me and the girls on Rena's birthday, her yard site, or on our anniversary, just to say that they were thinking about Rena or checking in on us. I can't tell you how much that means to me. Rena's 2 sisters and their families have stayed part of our lives because they continue to be our family. And I know that Rena would want it that way. Had it been reversed, there is no question in my mind that Rena would have done the same for me. In thinking back, I distinctly remember one visit with Rabbi Lyon shortly after Rena's death, and he counseled me to not do anything rash immediately and to allow the girls and me time to grieve. And as I worked through my grief, he told me that Judaism chooses life. I didn't really understand the second point at the time when I was in a fog, but as time has passed, I not only better understand what that means, but how that feels. I'd like to think that after a period of mourning, the girls and I have chosen life. And I know from some frank conversations that Rena and I had before her death, she also wanted the girls and me to keep moving forward in our lives and keep living. I wish I could tell you that every day gets better, but it doesn't work like that. The passing of time has helped, but I find recovery to be an uneven, ongoing process with its ups and downs. A rabbi recently told me that life should be more about looking towards tomorrow than looking back at yesterday. And I agree that life should be forward-looking, but I can't erase the past. It's part of who I am. Although we all still have our funks from time to time, I am happy to report that the girls are doing well in their respective careers and are in happy, healthy relationships, living mostly happy lives, at least as of the last text message. I too am in a healthy, loving relationship, one that I know that Rena would be happy for me. I am blessed to have had the life and experiences that I've had. I think that they have made me a better father, sibling, child, friend, and person. I'm also blessed that Mom and Dad instilled in my siblings and me the importance of family. And I have learned that we celebrate our joys and successes the same way we work through our challenges and grief, with those support systems that we are blessed to have in place. Family, friends, faith, love, and humor. And in my case, I feel all of those are organically Jewish. Shana Tova.
It all started with pomegranates. I met my husband, Harry, when I was 22. It was as close to love at first sight as I believe it gets. We both knew instantly that it was forever. The details of what that meant were still a bit fuzzy to us. But we knew that whatever came ahead, we wanted to tackle it together. My parents, Susie and Paul Gold, are what my teenager calls marriage goals. They have been married for 48 years and provided my brother Alex and me the most authentic and genuine portrait of love that we could ever have hoped for. My passionate, determined, and unrelenting persistence are products of their love and lessons. They are endlessly supportive, unapologetically devoted, and tirelessly invested in our well-being. Their marriage is one that I hope to mimic, and together we dreamt that one day I would be fortunate enough to find a partner as well-suited for myself as they were to one another. Harry is everything I am not. He is patient, gregarious, universally loved, and just the kindest man I have ever met. I was introduced to his family shortly after we met, and I immediately understood how Harry had become the man he is. My in-laws, Mark and Gail Folliter, were stolen from the cult classic My Big Fat Greek Wedding, except in our case, they were Jewish. They were doting, proud, inclusive, and the ultimate host and hostess, always making sure we were fed and cared for. At the time, Harry's beloved grandmother, Norma, was living with them. Norma was the matriarch of their family. And what I learned from her throughout the next 10 years would be formative for the family that Harry and I created and the parents we became. Now back to those pomegranates. In the months that followed our meeting, Harry and my relationship grew at a fast and furious pace. We quickly moved in together, and 8 months after meeting, we were engaged. I remember meeting with Rabbi Lyon almost 20 years ago for those critical pre-marriage counseling sessions. I learned that ketubah.com is the universal source for all engaged Jewish couples looking for their ketubah. It is here that our story really begins. We chose a beautiful ketubah with vines and pomegranates surrounding our sacred wedding vows to one another. Pomegranates represent fertility. Naturally, I fell for this ketubah hook, line, and sinker. It was besheret. Quite literally, it was meant to be. It was meant for us. We married in June of 2006, and the fast and furious pace we set during our courtship continued throughout our first year of marriage. I was excited to start a family, but I knew it probably wouldn't be that easy. I knew my own conception had taken my parents years. My mom tried to get pregnant for almost 5 years before she conceived with me. So I always knew that genetically speaking, this dream of mine wouldn't come easily. Rather quickly, we began treatment with a fertility specialist, and in September of 2007, we found out we were expecting twins. Everything was perfect until it wasn't. At 19 weeks pregnant, I went to my doctor complaining of lower back pain. I am a firm believer in using our story to help others. So if any other pregnant or soon-to-be pregnant women are listening, please don't ignore your body, don't minimize discomfort, trust your gut. I trusted my gut that afternoon, and without question, it saved the lives of our twins. I was in active labor, and I was 4 centimeters dilated. I was only 19 weeks pregnant, 25 years old, and my husband was out of town on business. I was rushed to the hospital where I would remain for the next month on bed rest. I laid upside down and was pumped to the brim with medications, determined for the twins to stay put for as long as possible. In Texas at the time, a fetus was considered viable at 24 weeks. At 23 weeks and 6 days after contracting E. coli in the hospital, I delivered Noah Slade and Samantha Jolly, each weighing 1 pound and 4 ounces. The prognosis was clear and dire. Statistically, they had less than a 5% chance of survival. Noah and Sammy's maternal grandmother, Jolly Katz, was a Holocaust survivor who survived the hell and brutality of Auschwitz. She persevered and overcame the unimaginable. And in my heart, I knew that the twins could and would do the same. Youthful naivete is a protector. Noah and Sammy spent the next 140 days in the NICU. Sammy experienced a stroke at birth, and her NICU journey was littered with neurological explorations. She requires a shunt, and that in of itself is a blessing and a curse. Noah had a smoother journey initially. The final 6 weeks of our NICU stay dealt us our most difficult hand. Both twins ultimately lost their vision due to retinopathy of prematurity. It was statistically unlikely, personally unimaginable, and yet it was our reality. I am often asked what prayer looked like in those months where the twins were clinging to life. How do you pray when you are too busy trying to save your children? How do you pray when your heart is filled with anger? How could God allow this to happen? How could he allow two tiny, innocent beings to struggle and have so much taken from them? There wasn't time for prayer. I was focused on the tangible acts I could do to save my children. I had prayed to have children, but this was hardly what any family would hope for. I continue to grapple with this to this day. I was certainly thankful for many things, but I didn't feel prayer was going to carry me through this leg of our journey. My husband and I had chosen life. The rest was up to us. I needed grit and tenacity, and I was given that in spades. The twins came home in June, and our new normal began. It was a blissful 2 weeks with the four of us under one roof. It was quite literally a million prayers answered. It was not meant to be. Sammy was readmitted to the pediatric ICU with meningitis only 10 days after she got home. And for the first time in many months, the fragility of her precious little life was becoming painfully obvious to us. It's a situation I can't quite describe. Fighting for someone's healing so fervently, while also praying that they don't suffer. What is life if there is not quality of life? Choosing life can be a very complicated endeavor. My grandmother Jolly and Grandma Norma became my North Stars. And as the weeks passed, it was evident that Sammy had inherited their inner strength, perseverance, and determination. Sammy may have a fragile constitution, but her will to live is indomitable. Harry and I set out on our journey to ensure our twins had quality lives. Our days were filled with therapy, another lesson I would be remiss not to pass along. Early intervention is key. It's a theme that has served us well in every regard. In true fast and furious form, we did not procrastinate. The twins began to thrive. Harry and I had embarked on the ultimate DIY project. We devoured information and advice and yearned for a handbook. Spoiler alert, there are no handbooks. Now, almost 16 years later, I realize that nothing could have prepared us for the unique journey that unraveled before us. We literally were the blind leading the blind. With the assistance of massive intervention, the twins miraculously began to make unprecedented strides, sitting, rolling, eating, walking, and slowly but surely talking. Sammy's speech was expectedly delayed due to her neurological trauma. Noah's speech developed, but his behavioral quirks were later explained by an autism diagnosis. The things you see, the things you don't see, and the things you don't know you don't see. No handbook for that. As the twins reached milestones, so too did Harry and I, and eventually we were ready for another child. We both knew that a sibling would only enhance the lives of the twins, and selfishly we wanted to experience a potential typical pregnancy and a neurotypical child. A life well lived is one that is well-rounded. We certainly struggled with this decision. So many uncertainties, but we were guided by the adage that the biggest risks yield the biggest rewards. The decision for us has always been to choose life. We took a leap, some would say of faith. I don't know, but it was a huge leap, once again, into the unknown. We chose life 4 years before when the twins were delivered prior to viability, and we decided to choose life again. Choosing life has its rewards. Sadie Grace was born in October of 2012. Her pregnancy was uncomplicated, obsessively monitored, and dutifully prayed over. The day she was born was unquestionably one of the most gratifying days of my life. The faith that we had poured into this decision and the promise to one another that we would stay strong no matter what the outcome was rewarded with a healthy, beautiful baby girl who has become the glue to our family, the blessing. Shortly after Sadie's birth, Sammy's epilepsy, which resulted from her stroke, began to escalate. I could see her slipping away after each epilepsy episode. Her memory was deteriorating, her energy was diminishing, my Sammy was fading. Our family, again, was facing an unthinkable choice. It was determined that Sammy's best chance of living a life with minimal epilepsy interruption, a quality life, would come through a radical, controversial, but proven surgery known as a hemispherectomy. During the surgery, they would essentially disconnect Sammy's left hemisphere, the entire left side of her brain. The risks were significant, if not existential. A delay in surgery was equally as risky. It was a gamble no matter what we chose. We again chose life. We chose the potential of a life uncompromised by epilepsy for Sammy. Certainly, we understood that there were no guarantees. My complicated relationship with prayer reemerged during the months leading up to Sammy's surgery. I have never used prayer in hopes of selecting an outcome, but in this instance, after deciding on a surgery date, I prayed for guidance. I prayed for a sign indicating that we were making the right choice. I never saw a shooting star or a ladybug that would deliver me such confirmation, but I did reach a sense of peace and contentment with our decision. On April 26, 2016, Sammy underwent a total left hemispherectomy. The surgery lasted 18 hours. Sammy woke up from anesthesia shortly after surgery and immediately asked for a cookie. We didn't know if the surgery had been successful at that point, but Sammy came out of surgery the same child who went in, and to us, that's all that mattered. Sammy's surgery was more than successful. Her epilepsy has been managed as a result of that fateful surgery. It was a rebirth for her and for our family. We had made an unbearable choice, a choice for life, and we were again rewarded. Sammy has not looked back since. All the medical drama of the past few years seemed to be in the rearview mirror. We had written our own handbook, but there was to be another chapter. What happened next was not scripted. It defies imagination. In January of 2017, after 10 years of trying to conceive naturally, a random trip to urgent care determined I was 12 weeks pregnant. Noah, Sammy, and Sadie had all been conceived with assistance. I was pregnant again, naturally. Life is full of mystery and irony. Annie Elliott was born in September 2017. If Sadie is the glue, Annie is the cherry on top of the sundae. Annie's love of life and her 10-year spread will ensure that Harry and I quite literally stay young forever. This life is founded on the Follett family philosophy that family comes first and the Gold family philosophy of never quitting. Our Judaism isn't very visible or nearly discussed as often as it should be, but it's constantly there, on display in the lives of our children, their will to overcome, their desire to live, and their love for family. In May of 2022, we made one more big transition. We moved from the Memorial area to Fulshire. We built a fully handicap-accessible home for the twins, with plenty of room for animals, friends, family, and all the things we love. The 6 of us started fresh in a home that works for us, in a community with little distractions and within walls of a forever home where we can focus on us, our gratitude for one another, and our abundance of blessings. While on our farm, our Jewish community is geographically quite removed from us. It's within us and within Noah, Sammy, Sadie, and Annie. It's how we got here, and it will help determine where we go and what attitude we have along the way. Without question, our story is not over. There will undeniably be more ups and downs, but I am confident in us and our ability to navigate even the toughest of country roads. L'chaim.
Good Yontif. My name is Laura Hall. Besides being a congregant at Beth Israel, I am an early childhood teacher at the Schlinker School and have been for 29 years. I am also an Aliyah teacher, meaning I work with children with special needs at the Miriam Browning Jewish Learning Center and had the pleasure and the honor of working with Sammy and Noah. I also co-chair the Inclusion Committee at the Temple with Alan Hurwitz. In other words, I live here. My religious journey has been a circuitous one. I grew up living in small Texas towns as my father was the regional manager of Zales Jewelers. While my parents were both Jewish, we lived in towns that did not boast of large Jewish populations. My first memories of Texas life revolve around the time we spent in Temple, Texas. We lived there until near the end of 8th grade. While life there seemed idyllic, there were not any Jewish children my age. In fact, we drove to Waco every Sunday so that I could attend religious school. To put it mildly, I hated Sundays. I didn't know the class and had no connection to the town. Strangely, I did like the high holidays. I loved the feeling of holiness and being surrounded by my parents at services. I can still feel the touch of my father's tallit as I leaned against him during the prayers. At the end of 8th grade, we moved to Amarillo, Texas, and I thought I had won the Jewish lottery. There were 100 families in the community and even a youth group. Although no one was my age, I enjoyed the feeling of community and the opportunity to attend youth group conventions out of town. When I was a senior in high school, my father was transferred to Austin, Texas, and I finally had a group of Jewish friends my age. My parents had friends in Austin who contacted Jewish high schoolers. The first day we moved into our house, 2 cars of my new best friends arrived at the house to show me around Austin and subsequently kept me busy all summer. I spent 1 night at home without the group that summer, and my father questioned whether I was sick. My senior year was fabulous, and I loved every minute of it. After having such a wonderful time in Austin during high school, it never occurred to me to go anywhere else for college than the University of Texas. I spent 4 more wonderful years in Austin. I had Jewish and non-Jewish friends, but did not engage in any Jewish activities on campus. After graduating, I moved to Houston and worked for 15 years as a banker. I still did not have a strong connection to my job or Judaism. Although I had an adult bat mitzvah soon after coming to Houston, I still felt like a part of my religious life was missing. It was only after I met the man who turned out to be my husband at a New Year's Eve party did I come to understand my need and desire for Judaism. My husband-to-be was and is everything I ever dreamed of in a man. Bill is brilliant, funny, loving, and kind. He cares for me like no one ever had or could. The only issue was religion. Bill is an observant Presbyterian. Suddenly, I had to evaluate what I wanted and what I needed. After 4 years of dating and exploring counseling, we finally said our I do's. What we learned from our journey is as follows. 1, an interfaith marriage is like an elephant in the living room. You may think that you have worked out all your issues, and you may have years where nothing comes up, but then you trip over the elephant and discover unforeseen issues that have to be dealt with. 2, Rabbi Walter of Temple Emmanuel, where my sister is a member, gave us the best advice we received as to raising children in an interfaith marriage. He told us that the healthiest children he had seen in interfaith marriages were those whose parents had chosen a religion for their children. If the children ultimately chose the other parent's religion, they, the children, were choosing a religion, whereas children who were not given a religion and were allowed to choose a religion on their own felt as though they were choosing a parent. He told us that ultimately our children would ask why we gave them the religion we did. His recommended response was, "That's what we decided to do." Guess what? He was right. Our children asked and were satisfied with that answer. 3, Bill and I have been married for 34 years. The reason our marriage has been as successful as it is is because we never asked for what the other could not give. I never asked Bill to convert, and he never asked me to raise the children Christian. We knew each other well enough to know that there were boundaries that could not be crossed if we wanted our marriage to work. So yes, our children are Jewish. We have a Jewish household, but we attend Christmas services with Bill as a family. Bill attends high holiday services with us and participates in all religious functions we participate in. What we also learned is that when you combine a Jewish mother and a Christian father, you get a rabbi. Our eldest child, Will, is the assistant rabbi at Temple Beth Shalom in Austin. Together, Bill and I watch his services every Friday night. Sorry, Rabbi Lion. Will told us that our differing views on religion made him interested in becoming a rabbi. I always knew that Will was more religious and observant than I was, but it still came as a shock, a good shock, but still a shock, when he called me at the end of his senior year in college as I was driving home from work and said he wanted to go to rabbinical school. I still remember the pole I almost ran into. Of course, I'm not sure why I was surprised. When Will was a junior in high school, we went to visit a school in Colorado. After being there for 5 minutes, Will announced that we could leave, as they did not have a Judaic studies major. When I asked him if that was important to him, he responded, "Of course it is. I'm going to get a major in Judaic studies and a minor in world religion." Who knew? Will's journey to becoming a rabbi brought me closer to my own religion. I discovered that I like services, that they bring me joy. I also love learning more about the Torah and about the deeper meaning of our holidays. Now, as I truly listen to the services, I find that I have more religious questions than before. The difference is that now I have my own rabbi to ask my questions to. Even when he reminds me that most of the answers could be found by Googling my questions, Will still patiently delves into any issues I have. I realize that I have found a whole new meaning and enjoyment in services, and not just because I take such delight in watching Will participate in those services. In essence, I feel that I have rediscovered my Judaism through Will's journey. The last major event that led me deeper into my faith was an unexpected one, when our youngest son came out to us as transgender. Although there was heavy anxiety in the conversation, Bill's response was, "This is your home, no matter what gender you are." I told you my husband is wonderful. That was the beginning of a very long journey for all of us. The first part of the journey for Bill and for me was confusion. We never doubted the veracity of Maddie's realization that she was a woman. Our children have always had a good handle on who they are. While she knew who she was still not ready to go public with her change. That meant that Bill and I could not tell anyone else until Maddie gave us permission to. We talked to a therapist, and we talked to each other constantly about what this change could mean to a child we adored. We were frightened about the world we live in and how that world would treat her. It was a very lonely year. I desperately wanted to talk to my sister and to my dearest friend, but I kept Maddie's secret until she gave us permission to share her news. Life was different, but we had each other and we had our faith. God became my constant companion. I found myself talking to God constantly, praying for him to watch over my child who was going down a very difficult road, praying to keep my child safe and happy in this crazy world. Please, God, please, became my constant mantra. It's amazing how many times a day one can pray while teaching a class, while cooking dinner, while laughing with friends, while watching a movie. COVID and harsh politics turned the world upside down, and made life difficult for everyone, but especially for those in the transgender world. I pray for a kinder, gentler world for all of us, but especially for my children. First and foremost, I will always be their mother. I love and respect my daughter every bit as much as I loved and respected the son she had initially been. We have become even closer as she experiences her new life. I am proud to say that she is navigating her transition while successfully writing for a national digital media publication based in New York. I don't think life is easy, but she has accepted her truth and is an example of being true to yourself. I couldn't be prouder of her. And as always, Bill, Will, and I continue to be there for her, just as she is there for us. As you've probably surmised, I've become closer to my religion through this change in our lives. My prayers are not just the ones in the prayer book, but mostly the ones in my heart. The congregation here, Julie Handel, my teaching partner at the time, as well as the rabbis and David Scott, have gone out of their way to make us all feel accepted. This is truly my home now. I realize that it takes a village, especially in Texas, for a family to go through such a transition. Therefore, if anyone in the congregation is transitioning or has a child who is transitioning, please know that Bill and I will be honored to be a part of your village, and you are welcome to contact us at any time. My journey to finding my way to a deeper and more satisfying Jewish life is nothing like I expected it to be. But then what journey is? I feel so lucky that my journey led me to Bill and to a deeper understanding of what Judaism means to me. No two people's journeys are the same, and I hope that your journeys bring you closer to your family, no matter what the configuration, and to your religion, as mine has. Good Yontif.
That was so beautiful. Oh,
Thank you, Rabbi Lyon, for asking me to do this lovely, difficult thing. I also want to thank my dear friend Kathy for being the first reader of the speech and giving me valuable feedback and courage. My childhood was idyllic. I was born to a rabbi and a dancer who were madly and deeply in love. Together, they created vibrant, happy Jewish homes, first in Flint, Michigan, where I was born, then in Chicago's Hyde Park neighborhood when my father was the rabbi of Sinai Temple, and finally in Houston when he became the rabbi here at Congregation Beth Israel. Our summers were spent in Charlevoix, Michigan, in a small cottage on a lake without TV or air conditioning, but with books and tennis and Dairy Queen dilly bars and Petoskey stones and Mom's homemade challah. Our parents' precious gift to each of their 3 daughters and all of their 7 grandchildren was their attention, their authenticity, their wisdom, and their love, and we are all ridiculously lucky. But there is a problem with idyllic childhoods. They promise a bright, blemish-free future that they often can't deliver. When I married at 22, I thought I knew what I was doing. I chose a Jewish man because my father couldn't officiate if I chose to marry a non-Jew. I chose a smart man who knew a lot about numbers because I knew a lot about letters, and I naively thought that we'd have all of life's bases covered. I chose a man who came from far away, New York City, because part of me had never felt completely at home in Texas. But I also chose a man who did not love or want me in the way a husband should. I lacked the experience or the wisdom to see underneath the facade he wore to woo me. On the outside, we looked like the perfect family. 3 healthy, happy kids, a big house in a coveted neighborhood, but things were not good. I loved being a mom. I loved spending my days with children, making up stories and cooking their favorite meals. I loved watching them learn and grow and figure out the world and who they were going to be in it. As my father would say, for this I was created. But my marriage was another story. I knew things weren't right, but when I questioned my husband, I was told that I was needy and unrealistic. I wish that our marriage could be more like the lovely, loving partnership I'd seen in my parents' home. This angered him, as if I were holding fast to a ridiculous belief in unicorns. I told my therapist that I just wanted my insides and my outsides to match. I was exhausted by pretending to be happy. She looked at me and said, "You've been existing on meager rations." As my 40th birthday neared, I knew that something had to change, but the words "broken home" still made my heart ache. One day, sitting in my dad's study, I attempted to tell him what I was feeling. I said it was like I was standing on the shore of a river. There were dangerous predators on the riverbank, and I felt constantly threatened. I couldn't let my guard down. But there were alligators in the river. I could see them, and the other side of the river was still just a blur to me. With tears in my eyes, I asked him why I would jump into the river with those hungry alligators when I had no idea what awaited us all on the other side. My father was listening to me intently. When he was sure that I had finished, he looked at me and said something I will never forget. "When you can't stay, you'll go." It sounds so simple, but it is profoundly true. But sometimes life has other plans. As I was preparing myself mentally and in other ways to jump into the river and start swimming, I was given a new hurdle. My sister Liz was diagnosed with breast cancer at the young age of 33. Her doctors tested her for the genetic mutation BRCA1 that was still relatively new, and she was positive. My other sister, Amy, and I were encouraged to get tested as well. Amy was negative, but I was positive. So immediately after my 40th birthday, I jumped in a different river than I was preparing for. Instead of consulting with lawyers, I was consulting with doctors and surgeons. My marriage was just a shell at that point, and the medical issues that needed to be discussed were difficult and intimate. My father and my best friend Sally took turns accompanying me to appointments, getting second and third opinions to try to sort through the complicated options. When doctors elegantly sidestepped the hardest questions, my father would look at them and say, "But tell me, if Rachel were your daughter, your wife, what would you have her do?" One highly respected surgeon, a Temple member, responded quietly, "I'd tell her to do it." My dad looked at me and we both knew the decision had been made. I underwent massive prophylactic surgeries to prevent both ovarian and breast cancer and to prepare my body for reconstruction. I had incredibly talented and patient doctors, loving parents and sisters, dear friends, and darling children. My husband remained on the sidelines, neither involved in my life nor my decisions. After my body healed, I lunged forward. I auditioned attorneys, signed up for graduate school, focused on how to prepare my kids and myself for our new life. During this time, some information arrived to give me the closure I had been searching for. I found out that my husband had been leading a double life, seeking company outside the marriage when he was supposed to be working late or traveling for business. Though he was still not willing to be honest with me, many things came into focus. He should never have married me or any other woman. On the day of my divorce, for the first time in many years, I felt free. I walked through the world again with insides and outsides matching. Since then, I received a Master of Arts in Teaching from Rice University and began 2 decades of teaching high school English, first at Lamar High School and then 18 years ago at St. John's. I've had the honor of serving as the English department chair at St. John's for the past 8 years. My grown children, Josh and his wife Sarah, Ben and his partner Kyla, and Emily are independent and awesome, and I am always thrilled to spend time with them. Josh and Sarah expecting their first child, a boy, in March, finally making me a grandma. I'm incredibly grateful that Ben and Kyla flew in from California to be here today, and that the others are joining via live stream from their homes in New York and Israel. I've also been blessed with an incredible and loving life partner. Charles, though not Jewish, is curious about life and religion, happily accompanying me to temple whenever I go. He began studying Hebrew before he even met me because the ancient language intrigued him. Though he was not able to meet either of my parents, my sisters and brother-in-law have assured me that Charles would have received their stamp of approval. I feel very grateful to finally know what a relationship like my parents actually feels like. Unicorns do exist. So what does any of this have to do with the prompt, how has Judaism shaped my life? This question is difficult because I have never not felt Jewish. My home growing up was filled with weekly Shabbat dinners that began with the blessings over the wine and challah, followed by each daughter standing up as our father placed his strong, gentle hands on our heads and recited the priestly benediction. Sinai Temple was classically reformed in the 60s and early 70s, and the main Shabbat services were held on Sunday mornings with a small service early Friday evening. As odd as that is, it allowed us to enjoy Shabbat as a family. After a glorious dinner lovingly prepared by Mom, we retired to our parents' bedroom where all 5 of us snuggled up to watch The Partridge Family and Love American Style. We would compete for first sightings of Dad's high school pal, popular character actor Noam Pitlick. Our Houston years included lots of family time and much time spent here at Beth Israel. My sisters and I would beam as our father spoke from the bima, speaking to each person individually, though the sanctuary was full. I swelled with pride hearing the congregation's collective murmurs of appreciation when he finished preaching. When I returned to Houston after college and married, I taught Sunday school here for many years and then watched my children proceed through the ranks of preschool at Schlenker, followed by religious school here at Beth Israel. Judaism had always felt to me like a family religion. After all, as I was growing up, the two were inextricably linked. But as a young woman in a very unhappy marriage, I often felt that I didn't really belong anymore. It became hard to be here at Beth Israel, where so many people knew me, because I felt the need to pretend that everything was fine and good. But there are other issues too. I grew up with a father whose belief was authentic and steadfast, but mine was less like a rock and more like the stream that flows over it. I believe that we are guided and nurtured by a higher power, but I wish I felt his presence as certainly as my father did. After my beautiful mom passed away in 2016, my sisters and I each created little ways to connect with Dad. One of mine was Sunday night dinners. It occurred to me one week that I should bring a journal and a weekly question to our dinners to capture some of my father's generous and abundant wisdom. One Sunday night, I asked my father about faith. He said he always felt religious, even as a kid, but that his view of God had grown and changed over the years. That night, at 87, he said that the God I believe in today is not more concerned about me than about anyone else, but I always felt that I was not alone, and I appreciated that. I asked him then what role God plays in the moments of darkness in his life. He smiled and said that I've managed to survive and thrive. And then he added, "There's no foolproof resolution to this enigma. Somehow, in my own life, I have sensed that I'm not alone. I feel the presence of the source of my being who is loving and caring and wants me to have a good life." As I sat across from my father that night, I remember feeling both awe and envy. I wished that my own faith felt that certain and clear. I wished that in the darkest days, when I had felt most lonely, I had known that I was not alone. With a certain sense of urgency, I asked, how would a person go about finding faith? I will leave you this afternoon with the 3 steps my father outlined. Perhaps you too are on a journey, and his words will offer some inspiration to you as they did to me. Step 1, you must first be willing to acknowledge your own neediness. Step 2, you must recognize the possibility that there is a presence in our life which helps sustain us and enables us to live a good life of caring and love, a life of gratitude for life's blessings. Step 3, you must assume that there is someone who is the source of our being and on whom we can depend for sustenance and meaning, and you must pray to them. Thank you for listening. Shana Tova.
Friends, thank you for joining us for our Yom Kippur Symposium. A round of applause for all of our contributors. And our afternoon service will continue in about 10 minutes.